Hello. Thank you, all of you that have joined us so far. Welcome to AI Unleashed, our web series that is focused on leaders in the new revolution, artificial intelligence. And tonight we have uh, AI powered content creation strategies with the incredible Aman Ubu. Aman is extraordinary. She's been featured by Forbes, Time Magazine, Mind Valley, the list goes on. She's a founder of Sway Media and her newest company called Vocable AI, which we're going to get into tonight. And our host tonight is Adrian Boisel, very good friend of mine. Adrian is an AI expert. He's got an amazing company called Brand Butler, which you're going to hear a little bit more about later today, later tonight. But without further ado, I'm going to pass this over. But before I do, a little quick bit about who we are. And if you're not familiar with us already, we're Create Impact Now. I'm the program manager. My name is Dale. And we focus on empowering entrepreneurs to launch and grow their companies. We focus not only on nonprofit organizations, but also for profit organizations that are socially conscious. And when we mean socially conscious, what we mean by that is have an interest in the growth of humanity, not just about making money, although making revenue is important. So we put together events like this to give our community access to the latest information, tools, and techniques to help them learn, grow, and thrive. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to my friend Adrian. Please take it away.
All right. Thank you, Dale. Yeah, Dale and I go back a few years now. One of my closest friends and one of my best friends, Mr. Brian Gallinger, introduced us years back. I would say this was 2020 at an event called City Summit. And I was just immediately impressed by Dale and the events that he had been putting together. And I'm just super grateful when I saw the opportunity pop up to come in and share. He said something on Facebook about, hey, do you know anybody that's good in AI that wants to host? And I was like, hey, pick me, pick me. And we got on the phone and I was like, hey, I hadn't talked in a little while. And it's just awesome to be here. It's awesome to see all of my friends in the Web3 space, my fellow giraffe family is what I call them. And I know that you guys are all here because you're interested in AI and how you can leverage this to grow your business. Many of you guys are into Web3, but you're also into Web3 trading, a lot of the different Web3 technologies, as well as artificial intelligence. So today, you're going to get your brain filled with some incredible info from a founder of a company that's been doing AI. I talked to her yesterday for a long time, longer than even myself. I think 2018, 2019, she was playing in the AI space, which many people didn't get in until 21, 22, like myself. And so I had been reading about AI for years and learning about AI, but I hadn't ventured into the space. And so you're going to learn from somebody who's been down this road for a long time and has seen it transform and change not just her life, but the lives of so many other people that she's worked with. And now she's built an incredible platform that I've actually had a chance to peek around and check out and look at, which I'm just super grateful for you guys to be able to actually experience this. This is a real big treat for you, for those that you were here, for you guys to have an opportunity to leverage this technology. So if at any point during the conversation you have a question that comes up, hopefully you're taking notes, you got a pen and paper, you're in a distraction-free zone, you can put those questions right down there in the chat, and myself or Dale or Iman, we will answer those. We'll have a specific time at the end to make sure we can answer all the questions that we don't get to, if just for the sake of time. I know she has a lot she wants to cover, as well as some interactive type stuff, hopefully that we can do together here today, just off of your guys' feedback in the chat. So the more active you are, the more engaged you are, the more feedback we get. I might ask you to put a 1 in the chat. If you're here with me, I might ask you for put a 2 in the chat. So just be ready for that. And with that being said, I would like to pass the microphone off to Iman.
And thanks, Adrian, for hosting tonight. I really appreciate it, but I'm also really excited about having someone like you be part of this conversation, because I'm always curious to chat and interact with other people who are also deep in the space, because, you know, sharing, I think, practical use cases on AI and how people are able to experiment with it and use it for their own, you know, pain points and to solve certain things that they couldn't solve prior to this time, you know, the age of AI, is always really interesting, because that's the best way to learn. And I know you're a big X, you know, enthusiast, which I feel like platforms like X and LinkedIn have really been a big part of me learning the, you know, the craft. I feel that when you read a lot of the AI news and just the media hype, a lot of it seems theoretical or kind of just like this big hype cycle, and it doesn't always come with, okay, but what do I do with this information, right? And I think that's most people's biggest challenge when it comes to AI. They're easily intimidated because it seems like it's moving so fast, because the headlines right now are just booming, right? If everything's AI on the news and it seems like it's moving at 1,000 miles an hour and you're not catching up fast enough. But I find that it's more useful and more productive for people to look at platforms where everyday people are sharing their own use cases and their own ways of experimenting with AI, because that is the best way to learn how to actually put it in practice. And in a way, that's kind of how I fell into it. I just felt, really intrigued and curious to see how most people that I was part of that community, on X or LinkedIn, are sharing these amazing ways of experimenting with the latest AI models, or this is how you create images that do XYZ, or this is how you create a faceless YouTube channel using just AI. And then they walk you through step by step. And that's ultimately how most people are learning this. Because the good thing about AI is that we're almost all starting at the same time, right? Like we're almost all catching up at the same time. No, I don't consider myself even an AI expert, even though I've been digging into it for a long time, but it's almost like, an equalizer in a way, because it feels like it's given a lot of people the same chances as most bigger companies. And we didn't have that before. So it's really an exciting time. And I'm just really excited to talk more about, this during this webinar, and also answer any specific questions around AI content creation, but also AI workflows in general, or any, where this is headed in a way. So feel free to drop your question on a chat. I definitely want to also cater to what the audience wants to hear. But Adrian, I'm ready for the conversation.
Yeah. So my curious question, from what I know a little bit about what you've done in the past, how has this, in creating this software and system for yourself, becoming somebody that went from having a media agency to now a SaaS company, what are some of the biggest pitfalls that you've seen that businesses are facing, where you are going from really a done for you to a do it yourself? I see this as, what you're saying is leveling the playing field and giving people a real opportunity to compete with the billion-dollar companies, to compete with the billion-dollar brands. We now have access to the same technology that 10, 15 years ago would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, to be able to implement into their businesses. And now you see companies like Salesforce and all these organizations implementing this, where anybody with either a free subscription or a $20 subscription can do it. But what are the pitfalls with AI that you've seen within what you're doing?
Yeah, so I'll just start a little bit from the start about how I even got to launch an AI startup myself, is because I always say I'm my own customer zero, right? So I definitely have been in the content marketing space for as long as I remember. I was on the agency side. I worked for big companies like even like Pfizer, Sanofian. So I did biotech communication and marketing. So I worked on bigger teams. I worked on the agency side, but I also launched my own startup in the media and content creation space back in 2016. So I also was a one-woman show for most of that. And then we started kind of scaling that operation. And then I had to hire content creators. I had to hire, editors, strategists, and just really scale my content operation system in order to keep up with, of course, the demand. And we offered services to a lot of our contributors where we help them come up with better content strategies and help them also craft their content planning and basically understand what a content lifecycle looks like and how to implement those steps in order to scale and streamline that process so that they're consistent with their content marketing. They are, they're creating content that actually performs and resonates with their audiences. So we have not only figured that out for ourselves as an operation team, but also we helped other content creators do that as almost like an additional service that we offered. And along the way, of course, I learned a lot in the process. But most importantly, I've seen and I've experienced firsthand the pain points of how of content creation in general. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, right? So it's a very scattered process to begin with. So there's kind of a few phases that go into the content lifecycle. There's research, brainstorming, ideating, planning. Then you got to write the content, draft it, whether it's even for videos and graphics, you have to come up with the copy first. Then you got to edit it. And then, of course, you got to turn that copy into supporting assets, and then you got to schedule it and publish it. So it's a really long process for just one piece of content. Now, imagine if you're doing that for 30 pieces of content on a monthly basis across different channels. It just becomes really impossible to manage for small teams and businesses without a sizable budget or resources to really handle that kind of content demands. So it automatically becomes a very intimidating process that most businesses who actually need it the most end up not wanting to even deal with that. And then just kind of put it in the back burner. And then they kind of try to do some of it every now and then. Maybe I'll post here and there, I'll wake up and figure it out with no strategy. And it's kind of like an afterthought, right? But then these are businesses that can probably value or benefit the most and get the most value from content marketing, because one, it helps you grow your brand. It helps you position yourself as a credible source and authority in your market. It also helps you communicate your brand narrative and story, and I'm sure you can talk more about that. And then it also helps you market your services and resonate and engage with your audience in a way that truly speaks to them and ultimately makes them choose you as the service provider or the business that they want to buy products from. And so there's huge benefits to content marketing, but the downside of it is that it's just becoming more and more impossible to keep up with all the content demands that one business has to go through to even get the results they're looking for. And so I've gone through it. I've of course coached people and businesses who have gone through it a million times over and over again. And so ultimately, when I was running my last startup, I decided, okay, how do we now scale this offering that we're offering content creators without having to increase our overhead? So we didn't want to hire more editors. We didn't want to hire more strategists because, again, we were bootstrapped and we just couldn't afford having a huge team of editors and strategists just to match as one-on-one with each, contributor or creator that we were servicing. So that's when I started looking into AI. I'm like, how do we, leverage technology and AI tools to make this process more self-serving, so that we just offer it to our members of the community without us having to get on a call with them and walk them through the process over and over again, almost like once a month across all these different, clients. And that's how, in a way, Vocable started coming into the surface. That was the initial inception of this idea of how can I leverage AI to create a software or a product that can do what we do now, helping clients streamline and scale their content creation, but again, in a self-serving way and without us having to be involved, because that's how I would scale this impact. That's how I would be able to help more businesses, more people who are struggling with those same pain points, without, of course, kind of charging them $5,000 a month and taking them on as a client, but rather here's a software that I built based on my own frameworks and process. It's proven. This is exactly what we've used to scale and streamline our own content creation. So now we're offering it to more people across the world to be able to do the same thing. And so that's how we ended up in launching Vocable in 2023. But before that, we were kind of experimenting with very, very low, not advanced models like GPT-2. I remember having to learn how to fine tune that in the playground. This was before ChatGPT came out. So there was no way of naturally conversing with the chatbot and understanding like, oh, I can just tell AI to create this piece of content. It'll do that for me. I had to fine tune a lot of it based on our own data that we had to collect from our own media company. And then basically launch a prototype that did what ChatGPT did, but more in a templated format. So you would actually put in your topic as a form, and then you would type in your audience, who you're writing your content for, and then it would create the full content for you. So that was our first prototype that we went to market with. And then shortly after, ChatGPT came out, and I thought, okay, well, we're screwed, you know, that's it. Everything that we've been working on now, ChatGPT offered this amazing kind of breakthrough to the world, and everybody's able to use that. They're not going to want to use our software. And that's when we started thinking, okay, how can we actually see this as a good thing, right? So ChatGPT being out and people being more comfortable using AI to create content is a good thing for a product like ours. But maybe what we need to do is pivot towards creating more of an experience and a product on top of AI. So we're no longer just offering AI or content creation as the value prop, but rather here's how this product can help you leverage AI to actually streamline a whole process and scale a process that you probably have struggled with early on, and maybe are even still struggling with now using tools like ChatGPT. Because even if you're going back and forth prompting for, you know, on ChatGPT, one, most people don't feel still comfortable with the prompt engineering and having to really come up with the best prompt to get the best output that is based on proven frameworks and storytelling that can actually engage your audience. You know, no one wants to most people are not really well versed in that. And then two, if you do have it figured out and you do have a prompt template that worked for you, that's wonderful. But then having again to do that and prompt back and forth for each piece of content across each channel for, let's say, the next month ahead, that's a lot of prompting back and forth. So now we're talking efficiency too. So yeah, maybe content creation has become easy because you can just type in a prompt and get the full post you want, but is it an efficient process that you're carrying? And I've experienced it as well. And I've seen a lot of clients of ours that waste a lot of hours and days sometimes just prompting back and forth to get one piece of content.
That's right.
To do what they want it to do. So that's, again, how we've, you know, had the vision with Vocable is how do we really create something of value that, one, is rooted in a specific domain expertise, which I have. So it's almost like I'm solving my own pain points, which I think, going back to your question early on as a founder, now with AI, there's a lot more opportunities for people to become AI SaaS founders just because it's easier, right? The barrier to entry is very low. And also being able to launch a product in the AI space is kind of the cool thing now. But you also have to stop and think, are you actually solving a specific problem that you understand, that you have experience, that you have domain expertise in? Because that's what we call founder market fit. And I think more than ever now, founder market fit is as important as product market fit, because you really need to understand the audience you're targeting, and the target customer you're targeting, and how you're truly solving those pain points for them, and how your solution kind of positions itself in the market.
Wow, that's powerful. I think from what I've seen, and this is where the rubber meets the road with AI, is a lot of people are using AI to try to take a shortcut and make their life easier, which, you know, there's value in that. But the people who are using it the right way are using AI to think deeper and to create even better content. And about a year ago, I had somebody that said, oh, they sent an email into one of the co-founders of another AI company, and they were like, you're ruining people's jobs, and how could you? And you're this copywriter, and why would you do this to people in our industry? And I'm like, hold on a minute. If you're still using the creativity and the experience and the wisdom and the knowledge, and you have that as your foundation, you've developed frameworks and systems in place and processes, and you take that and then you now feed that to AI, which 99% of the population is not going to do because they don't have those types of fundamentals. They don't have those kinds of foundations. And you actually feed it that. Now, what is it going to spit out to you? And it separates you from every single person out there, because we've all seen it here. How many emails have we gotten? How many Facebook posts have we seen? How many videos have we seen that are just generic AI generated garbage, just to put it as frankly as I can? And most of the stuff that's out there is garbage. So there's a lot of noise. You know, the noise is getting louder, but the noise is getting worse, and the frequency is getting worse. And so when you do create something that is exceptional, that is world class, that does have personality, that does have solid frameworks and prompt engineering behind it, when you actually know how to create a prompt, that's when you're able to separate yourself from everybody else in the marketplace and really create a distinct and what I would consider an iconic voice compared to everybody else that's just using it to pump out more content. No, I want to create better content. And can I create more content? Sure. If you're a content creator right now and you think AI is going to take your job, well, you're right. If you don't use it, if you don't adopt it, if you don't find a program like Vocable and implement this into your business and become a master at it, because the reality is people like myself who are decent copywriters, who now have really good content strategy frameworks and brand strategy frameworks and marketing planning and all the strategies that come behind me, I can outdo the average copywriter because of this tool that I have. And most people are still afraid to use it. So I'm able to do better copywriting. I'm able to do it faster than I've ever been able to do it before, which gives my client a faster return in building their website or creating their content for their social media, whatever that is. So there's literally no downside. It lowers my overhead, increases my top line revenue. So I'm responding to these emails and I'm telling my friend, I'm like, tell them, like, tell me one bad thing about how AI is hurting and killing your job right now, because I only see the positives in this. I only see the opportunities in being able to produce more content, better content, and at more volume as well, which is a really powerful thing.
And I agree with that. I think, at least from my experience, the people that I see complain about how AI's content is bad, or that it's not useful, or that it's, ruining everything, I think are the people that are using it the wrong way, or maybe expecting the content to come out completely perfect and that they don't have to make any edits. You'd be surprised how many times I've gotten on demos with people that have created, great content strategies and plans on Vocable, but then they get to kind of like the final draft. And then they're like, wait, but I don't think it got my client testimonial right. Or, this part is not right. But I'm like, that is where you come in. You have to realize that I think the best use of AI right now, when it comes to at least content creation and marketing, is for efficiencies and workflows and planning and brainstormings and coming up with the high level things that can help you then get in your creative space. And then if you have great ideas that AI generated, right, and at least you have like a few to work with, at that point, you didn't have to waste too much energy getting to that point. Now you use that energy, that creative energy, to come up with, for example, your script on your own, because most people who are in the content creation space don't have trouble with that as much. I think what I've seen the biggest struggle has been is just coming up with ideas constantly that really speak to your audience, that speak to your brand, that resonate, that have that kind of emotional hook or, storytelling aspect, because that's what performs well right now in today's day and age. And when you look at any channel now, you open it up, even emails, if the subject line doesn't hook you, doesn't come up with like something really shocking or, counterintuitive, or has that weird twist to it, and if it's kind of generic, like, oh, this is what's happening, or, the complex concept of this, nobody's going to open that. And same with LinkedIn posts now. They're super storytelling driven. Like, I mean, you have people on LinkedIn posts writing, paragraphs of stories just to get to the point at the bottom, and people engage with that. And I know it's a very different and new concept to most businesses, especially service, I think, based businesses who are a bit more on the either complex side, like complex, topics or industries. Let's say, for example, like hypnotherapy clinics or whatever is an example that I use a lot for our demos, because we worked with a clinic here in Miami who struggled with, okay, we have these great expertise about hypnotherapy and we want to educate the masses on it, but it just comes across boring. It comes across too complex to really engage our audiences on this new concept for them. So how do we make it more resonant? And that's where storytelling comes. Like, people want to connect with things that they feel is relatable to them, or things that can really catch their attention, because we live in like the scrolling economy where you're just like, you want to make people stop. That's your goal. Not even read, but stop. Just like, if people stop because you have a hook or something that really like draws their attention, that's the content that now performs. And so I found that is very hard to create and establish with kind of generic chatbots that are versatile, because it takes a lot of prompt chaining and tweaking to really bring out those storytelling frameworks and start creating content at scale using those kind of hacks and best practices. And I think that's where most people also kind of hit like a block, right? So they start using AI at the beginning. They're super excited about, oh, thank God, now I don't have to start from scratch when it comes to creating content using AI. And then they kind of start hitting a dead end after a few, trials of, using ChatGPT or Claude or any other maybe AI tool that just kind of gives them that repetitive generic content over and over again. And that's when they feel like, okay, this is not good. It's not really working well for me. And then they kind of give up on it and have this more of a pessimistic view on AI in general. But if we can just keep the mindset of AI being a tool, meaning that it's your job to make the most of it. And it's not working for you, it's working with you. So you really have to steer it. We are still at the age where we have to be kind of still driving the car. We're not at the agentic AI yet, where we can trust AI to really have context and enough autonomy and enough reasoning power to be able to think like us. But you as a human, this is probably your most important job now as a business owner, as a creative, as a marketer, is to be this kind of creative director. So you move yourself from a content creator to a creative director, where you're now steering the creative direction, and then you have AI fill in the blanks for where you have bottlenecks and you are kind of lacking efficiency or scalability.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think, when it comes to the autonomous mode, if you will, the self-driving mode with AI, I do think we're a year or two away from that really being in full effect. But now is the time to start building those types of systems and processes within your business, because I do believe in high human touch still. And what I've had a few of my mentors and friends talk about over the last few years is a term called AI optimization. AIO is the term that was developed. And you take a piece of content that ChatGPT or Claude, for copywriting, Claude is far superior in my experience to ChatGPT. ChatGPT will give you a really great outline and some really great data to then bring into Claude. So I've been using probably until I start really full-time using Vocable, but I've been using Claude and ChatGPT simultaneously. So I come up with the original thing, I come up with my prompts, I generate that, I put that into ChatGPT, then I take that, I bring that over into Claude, and now I got to have it generate the first draft of the actual article, because ChatGPT is only going to give me like 1,200, 1,500 words max. And a lot of the articles that I like to write are 2,500, 3,500 words, and sometimes even longer. And so Claude is going to be able to do that. And it just writes so much better in my voice. But then I still have to take that article, take it out, and then put my whole voice into that, my personality and some of my flair and terms that I use. Even though it knows me and it's studied my Zoom calls and all the things I've trained it on, it still needs that extra personality for it to not read as an AI article. I mean, I don't know how many articles I've had both platforms use, and it's like, in the beginning, comma, and then it's always starts like, in the modern age, comma, and it's like the same intro that every AI article does, and I always have to change that and adjust that. So for you, that's been in the content game now, I think you talked about 7 years within your agency that you have, and now years that you've been working on, 2-3 years you've been working on Vocable. You got basically like a decade of experience in content marketing. What are some of the go-to strategies that you've implemented that you've brought into Vocable that people can have access to?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's important first to fully understand what a true content lifecycle is. And I think most people do skip a lot of those steps. And that's ultimately why you end up in this kind of burnout, and you're not able to scale properly. And also you're not able to create content that genuinely serves a purpose and is aligned with your business goals. So it's important to reiterate that there is no point of creating content for the sake of creating content, which I think is, I would say 90% of people still operate that way. And it's just really surprising to me, because I, for one, don't ever want to do anything I don't have to actually do. So if right? So like if I have to be tasked with creating a content, let's say as a business owner, I have to understand how that fits into my business goals and what is, how do I align that with my business goals? That's one. I think it's also important to, before you even come up with any content strategy or execution plan, is to really study your audience and understand who you're talking to. And I think in the age of AI, what I see a lot of people be so caught up in and preoccupied with is, oh, my brand voice, I want to sound like this, or I want to be, they have this kind of idea that they're so married to of how they want to sound, or the kind of content or writing style that they want to create content with. But then I ask, have you stopped and researched what is your customer voice? Because it doesn't matter how you want to sound. If your customer is not engaging with how you sound or this idea of brand voice that you put in your head about like your business, then does that really serve a purpose for you? So yes, brand voice is important as far as this is, am I like a high-end brand, or, am I like accessible? Am I relatable? Am I more professional, or am I like witty? That's important. It's good to have those guidelines in place. But also don't be so married to them, because you'd be surprised how many brands that we used to think are super professional and like corporate and analog are now the cool ones on like social channels, because they have listened to their customers' voices and then they have switched their type of content to match that. And the best way to learn about your customer voice is to just do, whether it's manual or using AI, is doing simple research on forums, like social channels, maybe even use sentiment tools to see how your target audience really responds to maybe competitors in the market. Really understand how your audience feels about the solutions that exist currently in the market as far as your competitors go, and then how they respond to them, so that you can cater your messaging and you can cater the kind of content and any kind of even brand voice or whatnot to that audience, because that is, I'm sure we can all agree on, that is ultimately the goal for content, right? Is to be able to touch your audience, really engage them, and then eventually convert them into customers. Unless, again, you're just doing content for fun and care more about followers, that's a different story. I'm not very expert in that. I'm more into content marketing for businesses that really they use that as a way to market their services and eventually convert into sales. So that's that. Customer voice is very important, because that is probably more important these days than brand voice. I think once you have that initial research and you have those, your audience pain points, their customer voice, really understanding, how to position your messaging, I would use these three important kind of context material, or even I would call them source of knowledge for any kind of AI moving forward. Like these are the things that would probably go into any prompt that I would create, or I would maybe even attach it, for example, to Claude, or maybe I would add it for Vocable. We have a brand profile that you can, add things to, and, have your voice tweaked and all that. So that ultimately adds the context to AI, and it becomes the foundation of every content strategy. So now we move to the content strategy part, where at this point you're deciding in a way, how many channels do I want to focus on? Do I have the capacity to be everywhere? Probably not if you're a small business, and especially if you're just getting started. But also, now that you know your audience super well by this stage, you will probably figure out, where does this audience spend the most time? Some people's target audiences are mostly on LinkedIn, if you're more on the enterprise B2B or clients kind of management side. If you are e-commerce or a more Gen Z kind of targeting, that's probably TikTok for you the best. If people really like to engage with long form storytelling, I would obviously advise for email and blogs, because that helps you get discovered and bring back traffic to your website. So this is very important, because I would always advise people that are getting started to not think at scale first until they master maybe one or two and see if that works for them. Then it's easier to scale by channel versus trying to start all at once. And then you're like, wait, I'm kind of confused. How do I even track this progress across all those channels, especially if you don't have, too many people in your team managing this? Because even though AI is good at creating all of this, you still want humans to look over the strategy and then track progress and see what metrics work and what doesn't, to be able to continually iterate onto your strategy moving forward. So now that you figure out your channels, then you would then move into ideating what kind of content. How do I transform my expertise or my knowledge into this emotionally resonant content that is optimized for the platforms that I choose to show up on? And also, how do I make sure that I show up consistently? Because you don't want to start engaging your audience and then not offer them the value that they continuously look for. So when people love an account, or they love someone's way of sharing insights or value, they definitely want to keep seeing more of that. So make sure that when you do get started, that you kind of have a plan in place to have always content in your backlog for a rainy day, right? It doesn't always need to be like the most perfect content, but at least you're delivering something. And there's multiple ways of doing that now with AI. You create a full campaign ahead of time, right? So with Vocable, we create 30 days at once, whether it's one channel specifically, or you can create multi-channel content. So you have ideas for you to work with for the following month. So you're never running out of ideas. You can also do that with other chatbots, but you can also repurpose old content too. So let's say an email really worked well, and now you think, okay, this clearly resonated with my audience. How do I push it even more? Because one, it's been proven that it worked. And then two, I can probably repurpose it into different formats and different even ways of storytelling or hooks that can apply to different channels. And then now you have more and more content that one, you have your evergreen kind of original content that you're creating consistently. And then you have content that has performed that then you can repurpose into content. So now you basically have two buckets that you can always pull from if you set your strategy and content creation kind of process the right way. Because you will never feel like, oh, I just don't have an idea of what to post. That in the age of AI should not even be a problem anymore.
Oh yeah.
More about the execution.
Yeah, I mean, when I develop brand strategies and then the marketing plan for people, and then where they always really fall off is on the sales side, where making offers, right? Because they do a good, decent job getting people to it, but then they have a hard time making an offer. But when it comes to the actual content itself, a lot of people struggle with the hooks, they struggle with the story, and they struggle with that call to action. Those three, right? Hook, story, call to action. And I keep seeing that over and over and over again. And that's usually one of the first things that I look at for business that's struggling, that's hurting. And my approach to that was understanding some of the different methodologies, like what Chet Holmes teaches in the Ultimate Sales Machine with education-based marketing, what Donald Miller teaches with StoryBrand and the SB7 framework, what I've learned from story selling, which is another framework that I've created. And so I've taught my AI and my what I call my bank super agent. I've taught this to follow all those same methodologies and frameworks and trained it on that. And once I've done that, man, if I just put in a Zoom call or a past call that I've done, or a training that I'm doing, or an idea that I have, or an article that I've written, and I stick that in there, what I'm able to populate is just incredible. So I'm curious. I know that there's people here that probably want to look under the hood and get a little taste of what Vocable actually has to offer from a content strategy standpoint, because content is the name of the game. I've built my entire following, all of my income, the 7 figures a year that I generate in my business, straight organically, 100% organically from content. I do not run paid ads. It's not that I don't like paid ads. They're very powerful. I do it for my clients all the time. But paid advertising is not how I've built my business. I've built it completely organically from YouTube, Facebook groups, LinkedIn. I do this thing called the Daily Business Minute, and I trained it on something what I call the framework for the Daily Business Minute, which is 45 seconds of a problem and 45 seconds of a solution that ends with a call to action. And I do those almost every single day. And it's just a little 60-second read. And I was able to repurpose that. I turned that into a carousel on Instagram. I'm able to turn that into a little audio recording for Reels, or like a little video, reel recording. So I'm able to repurpose that. And now I've got 397 of them, which I'm turning into a book. And I have the Daily Business Minute, which is like your business devotional, your daily business devotional book. And I wouldn't have been able to do that at the speed that I have now, because each one of those business minutes I was doing back in my radio days, 2016, 2017, 2018, before I was using AI. And each one of those 60-second, actually it was 90-second clips, would take me 45 minutes to make one. Now I've trained this whole thing on that framework. I put in the topic that I want to talk about and the 10 different categories that I have, and it just pops it right out. I go in and I optimize it to make sure it sounds like me, that it looks good. I put a graphic with it, and I post it to my Circle community. I post it to my Facebook group. I post it to my X platform and my LinkedIn. And I mean, I think in 1 week alone, I got 1,500 people that subscribed to my newsletter on LinkedIn for the Daily Business Minute, which was really, really cool to see. Basically, it's an email newsletter that LinkedIn built into their own system. So I posted that almost every single day. So I would love to give people a taste of how they can leverage Vocable to be able to do this for them.
Yeah, and just to iterate on that, just I like that you also brought into the spotlight that consistency is genuinely what also works, because most people give up within a few days of not,
Yeah.
I only have 1 likes or 2 likes, but then they don't understand that people need to see the same thing almost over and over again, or the same brand posting different stuff, so that they can start engaging and be like, oh, okay, this is not a one-time thing. This is actually like an account or a brand that I can rely on to really learn about XYZ. And then the idea too is like, once they see that they can learn from you on these channels, you can pull them into email, and you can now, have them as leads, or they can now trust you to buy from, because they trust the value that you brought to them. And I think one other advice too that I want to share before, we jump into demos and stuff, is also understand what your process looks like now. Because I know when I do these webinars and stuff, obviously people want to know more about Vocable, and this is like the product that I push, of course. But I also say that I want to also help you think about how you can genuinely put together your own tool stack that works for you, because we know everybody needs different things. Right? So some people are really good at strategy, and maybe they just need more graphics and supporting asset type of tools, and that's the tool stack they need to be building. So it's really important to understand, what does your process look like now, and then how can I fit AI into it? And so when you know what your process looks like, then you can build a system around it. And then that system translates into a tool stack. So for me, for example, my tool stack is Perplexity for research. Then I have Vocable for strategy and drafting the copy. And then I take that copy that I get from my content plan or campaign from Vocable, then I put it into Napkin, which is for graphics. I put it
I've
into
heard of that.
Post Nitro for carousels, because we post a lot of carousels on our Vocable account on Instagram. That's kind of what we're focused on the most, and Reels. I put that script into HeyGen for UGC Reels, or I just basically like also recite it and then create my own Reels, or have some of our UGC creators take that script and then film it. And so that's a process now that I follow almost, month to month. And then I have dedicated 2 days of my month where I just get all of this batch creation done, batch strategy, batch creation, batch editing. And then I'm basically set for the next month, and I schedule it, and then I don't have to think about it again. And so when you operate this way and you have a system around your content operations, just like you probably have a system around anything else related to your business, you don't suffer from the burnout, because it doesn't feel like I'm doing it day in and day out. It feels like, oh, it's a system that I have dedicated 1 or 2 days a month for, and then I get it done, and then I move on, and I just go on about my business. And when you have that in place, you will feel you get more excited and creative about the concept of content creation, because it doesn't become this, oh, I have to do content today, or
Yeah.
so it's like having that system is, this is what I advocate for, is like, if there's anything that I try to teach people, is like AI content systems versus AI content creation, because content creation is just one phase of the entire content lifecycle. So I don't know if anyone has any questions before we jump on to
Yeah,
just
if you guys have questions about content
of
strategy, content frameworks, prompting frameworks, other tools she mentioned, Perplexity is a great research tool. HeyGen is another amazing tool. I hadn't heard of Napkin, so I'm gonna have to look up that one. That's really neat. Yeah,
it's great. Yeah.
I have a pretty cool stack as well of stuff that I use. I use Midjourney a lot for my image generation. Now I've jumped over to ChatGPT for the first time ever. Claude, we've mentioned a few really good tools here already, and she's about to get into a fire tool and show you guys here. So let me make sure I highlight this. You guys can see this okay? Give me a number 1 down in the chat if you can see her screen, see Vocable dashboard there. There we go. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Jesse. Napkin, HeyGen, yep. And I think it's GEN, HEYGEN. Is HeyGen?
GEN, yes.
Yes. Gold. Okay, so what are we looking at? This is the dashboard here.
Yes, so this is the main dashboard. So if you are a new user or even a returning user, this is kind of what you're met with. And this is almost like your main workspace, because here you're able to start a new campaign using a prompt. So you would pick your channels. So again, you could either pick one channel to create 30 days worth of contents for, let's say, just Instagram. And that's for people who are planning specifically 30 days worth of content, so they can have a campaign dedicated to just Instagram, a campaign dedicated to just LinkedIn, so that they kind of bundle everything out on for one channel. Or there are some people who, for example, when you have a milestone, right, or any product launch or something specific that you're trying to create promotional content around, and you want to push that more across different channels, then you would create a coordinated multi-channel campaign where you can pick multiple channels at once, depending on, again, where you distribute. And then that kind of creates a coordinated content mix based on your prompt, your goal, whatever it is. So then you have your goal here. So let's pick, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So this is your kind of prompt box. And initially we had a different setup, but now we wanted to have something similar that people feel comfortable with, which is kind of like the prompt box where they can feel creative. This is where I dump all of my ideas or thoughts about like what I'm creating content around, and then it just turns that into a fully formed, organized content plan for the next 30 days. So I like to use kind of our, clinical or hypnosis clinic that I just thought it was interesting, but this is like an interesting use case for me because I didn't know anything about hypnosis, and then I had to work with them to really help them kind of revamp their content strategy. And then I could see the difference as far as how they used to create content and the ideas they would come up with versus the ideas that Vocable kind of comes up with, which is a little bit more, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. Like it's very now framed with like proven storytelling hooks and things like that. So this is where you put in your frame. For here, I just kept it simple, generate a high impact campaign that will educate people on the benefits of hypnosis as a new modality for therapy and as a way to transform your life and go deeper into your subconscious and pre-programming. So you could see it could be a simple, one sentence prompt, or you can of course get as deep as you'd like. And I'm sure the more context and details you give it, the more accurate it'll feel. Here you have a drop down that has your brand, which you typically can add through this navigation bar here on the left. So you can just put in your website and it would scan your website based on the information that it has. And then it would create kind of this brand profile that, that you can add here into your prompt so that it gives a little bit more context onto your brand. And you can also choose your campaign goal.
That's great.
So for this, and then you generate, but then here also you have all of your campaigns listed, your active campaigns. And it's this simple. So we made it very straightforward here, where now it takes on all of that information and then it creates a full content plan based again on the storytelling frameworks and any kind of optimized hooks that it's trained on for specific different platforms.
Beautiful. And then how long does this typically take to generate?
Not long. It'll be a few seconds. There we go.
Look at that.
And so now you're going to watch it kind of just spit out 30 days worth of content. And you can also see how you can already start seeing how, your content is obviously like the hooks and everything is very much focused on what works in different platforms.
How your therapist isn't telling you about accessing your subconscious. That's a good one right there.
Yeah, strongly. It's just very like, imagine never being triggered by your past again. I would watch what happens when we access 95% of your brain. So it's really the things that could draw attention to the content. So then now it drops you into your main campaign and the default is like this list view. So you can kind of just go through each idea that it generated. You can also have Kanban view, which kind of keep tracks of your content once you start working on each one. And then what I like to do, and this is why I love to talk about batch creation and batch kind of planning, is that after it generates my content, then I like to go in and click on this left side here, which kind of opens up this brief. And brief is kind of like an industry term that I think a lot of people may not be familiar with, but basically briefs is what gives everybody, if you're working in a team, an idea of like what the content piece is about or what a content campaign is about. So before we even get to the content creation, part, you kind of say, okay, I'm going to create an Instagram reel, and this is the description about what it's going to be about. And then you just give it kind of direction before you even get to the content creation. And the way I like to think about brief is a sophisticated prompt almost. So it spits out this idea, and then it gives you this very detailed description so that the AI can then follow these instructions and then create the content for you. So we also have custom instructions. And so this is also where you're able to add any additional instructions that you want AI to take in consideration. It could be maybe a client testimonial that you can add in here, or it could be write this in French instead of English. Any kind of directions you want to give it can go in here, and you can also use the description as a way to edit and add more into it.
You just answered my question there, was on multi-language. So that was really helpful. I was wondering about that, is being able to do it in different languages now for different countries, and that's a huge advantage right there. So you can actually
and you can also
right?
write it. Yeah, even some people write the prompts in their own language, and it spits out a whole content campaign in German or Dutch or whatever, or French, whatever the prompt language was. Or you can also do it in English and then come back here and say, I want this in French instead. And the other interesting thing too is that you can change this. Let's say this is a great idea that I loved, but maybe I want this more as a LinkedIn post instead of an Instagram reel. Or, I would think that it's just seems like more fitted for Instagram or LinkedIn.
Wow, that's cool.
Then I can just change it here and just also open the description, and then I can change this to create a LinkedIn post instead. So now you're able to create a LinkedIn post instead of an Instagram reel. So you're able to really play around and customize this content plan a little bit further based on your preferences. And so you're able to just go through the whole list and then again, kind of review. This is your time to review the ideas in the post. Use the brief as a way to add any additional directions. And then if you're ready, then you can start clicking on view content, and now it's creating the content for you in real time. And then it drops you into your entry editor to further edit it or regenerate it using the edit brief if you'd like. So if you, let's say, I love this, but I want it in French, write this in French instead.
Wow.
You can regenerate it using this button.
Oh, that's neat. And you get the content score over there.
I didn't save it. I have to update brief. Yeah, so you can, so the content score is also here to kind of guide you. So there are some high level kind of readability, accessibility, things that you can probably tweak and add to just so that you can increase your score. But typically this is where I like to tell people this is where you probably would spend most of your time, because now the hard part has been done and you were able to generate a handful of great content posts that you think you can get started with and you can at least work with. So go through the content, review it, generate the posts, and then spend some time going through the actual copy and then make it sound even more like you. So you can add your own specific examples, because sometimes AI does give you some stories, but it's not always exactly matching your story. So make sure you replace those with your actual stories, or I can give you client testimonials, just like even Claude does that, or ChatGPT does that. But then you go and replace your client testimonials that was generated by AI with your actual client testimonials. So this is probably the only time where you are asked to spend enough brain power to be able to personalize it even more and add your human layer. So you take content from 80% or 70% to 100% by really making it yours, using your own kind of stories, your own personal insights, and making sure that it actually matches the content that you would be posting regularly. But other than that, it does give you quite a bit of storytelling frameworks and content to work with, where you don't have to always feel like you're starting from scratch and thinking about, okay, what kind of content do I need to create? So this could be for, again, like I mentioned, for multiple channels as we have here, or you could just create a full campaign using just one channel, right? So you can pick, like, I want to just create a series on YouTube, or maybe I just get an email campaign. and then you just generate that with by choosing one channel. And
Okay.
now you have 30 days of just email content that you can use to then shelve. And so you're able to be consistent with your email newsletter, for example.
And under 30 seconds too. That's absolutely wild.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
This is
like
great
that for
for
emails.
strategy. Yeah. And strategy and like an initial content creation draft to be able to give you at least a stepping stone to create other forms of content, whether it's video, turning those scripts into video, turning those scripts into carousels, you know, or audio, if you will, voiceovers, whatever that might be. But at least you kind of have the foundation here already done for you. Now you just got to translate it into supporting assets.
So once you have one of these pieces, like you have view brief there, and you get this piece of content, whether it's an email, how do you then take it and implement it? What's that process look like?
So for me, I mean, you can publish directly on LinkedIn from Vocable, which kind of saves you time. So you're able to integrate that
I
into
was
your
wondering. Okay,
integration.
I saw the integrations on the left. I was curious
Yeah.
about that.
And same thing with blogs. So anything that's text-based, long form or short form text-based, you can integrate directly on Vocable and then ship it over to your platform just from Vocable's platform. But of course, with Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, those require videos and
Yeah.
graphics. So what I would do typically if I'm you know, creating a reel, then I would just go through the reel. I would edit it based on what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would then copy and paste it either to my app or teleprompter, where I'm the one kind of just following the script and filming
Yeah.
it myself. And then my video editor turns it into a reel, or I share it with one of our UGC creators and then they take it over and then they basically, you know, use it
Very
as a
beautiful.
script to create it. But at least I'm able to get the, you know, the initial like let's say, for example, TikTok, I'm able to get the additional script, everything approved and sent to the UGC creator. That way it kind of aligns with our goals and what our brand is.
Wow. Look, I love how it's writing it right there as you're sitting there looking at it. That's really cool. That's
And it
really
gives you
neat.
some directions too around like, you know, CTA or the hook, you know, that goes at the beginning, the main content, and then, you know, like look at this camera or this is the visual effects you should add, things of that nature that maybe if you're too much of an expert in video editing and content, you might not need those necessarily. But I think for a lot of our customers who are kind of small business owners really trying to take on a lot of this on their own, this is very helpful to even put into other like AI apps like in video, for
Yeah.
example, and then turn that into a full video content with all of this specific guidance and direction from Vocable's output.
That's beautiful. Yeah, this output is great. I'm curious on the integration side, what other integrations are there aside from LinkedIn and the other ones that you have there?
So we have
Okay.
CMS
WordPress,
Webflow,
that's a good one.
Wix, and
Yep.
WordPress, LinkedIn, Facebook, and X as of now. So these are specifically the text-based content. We are probably going to do a whole revamp of our integrations where we add a lot more, even those channels that require images and videos, because what you could do is just upload it at least and schedule it directly from the platform. So that's something we're kind of reworking. And this feature here planned is going to become basically a calendar that allows
Okay.
you to batch upload all of your content, whether it's text-based, you can add images, upload them directly, or you can upload your own videos and you're able to schedule and have that published directly to your channel. So that's kind of I would say that the next big layer of our platform offering is to be able to also help people go from ideation almost all the way to scheduling and publishing.
That's beautiful. Yeah, the planning thing I think is going to be really huge because 99.9% of businesses and brands do not come up with a plan. They have no real strategy behind their plan. They just throw stuff at the wall and then hope it sticks, or they see somebody else's stuff that sucks and they think it's great because the people are doing it consistently and they have a big following. It's funny how people think like, oh, this person's got a big following, so their content must work. And it's like, no, they've been at it for 5 years, posting 5 times a day for 5 years. And they've built a big enough audience where people love their content, resonate with them. They know, like, and trust them. And so you're not them. You don't have 5 years and 500 posts, or 5,000 posts on your profile. So trying to create another watered down version of their stuff isn't
Yeah.
gonna work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so another thing too with our entry editor is that there is an AI assistance feature
Okay.
on the Pro plan. So when you are on the editor, you're actually able to prompt Claude models, GPT models,
Mm.
and Gemini directly from the entry editor as well. So you don't have to actually leave the platform to be able to create even more. So you can prompt those directly from the platform. So you have access to those models directly.
Yeah, and you probably don't run into the situation where I know some people probably here. I'm guessing Stanley, which we'll get to his questions here in a second. They're good questions, where you put so much training and so much information. You give it that what we call the knowledge base, and then it tells you that you've reached the max of this conversation, and you have to start a new one. And I'm like, wait a
Yeah.
minute, how am I going to get everything from this conversation over to a new one, and how is it going to remember it all? Which is a really common problem right now. Oh, that's beautiful right there.
Yeah. So I
That
don't know why on my screen this little black thing comes up, but
yeah.
it's not in any other users for some reason. I thought it was everyone, but it's just me. I think it's like my screen dark mode or whatever. But yeah, so you're able to just pop up. You can click on any white space or like hit enter, and then this
Beautiful.
kind of pops up, and you have AI assistance. And then this is kind of your small little prompt box. If you were thinking, okay, last minute, I wonder if like give me like 5 taglines about XYZ, or
Mhm.
answer this question for me, and you can add it directly to your content here as well. And then you're also able to highlight and have shortcuts too.
That's beautiful. I love this. This is really great. So we got about 15, 20 minutes left before we got to wrap it up. Unless there's anything else that you wanted to demo or show. No?
No, I think this is the most, I mean, this is kind of the bulk of our product right now is really, we want to simplify it to be able to help you with strategy, and then a good 30 days of great content, especially rooted on emotional connection and hooks,
Yeah.
and optimized for each platform. So I think if people are able to master this and this works for them as far as adding to their tool stack, then we've definitely kind of achieved our mission. And there's
Yeah.
of course a lot more coming down the pipeline as far as features, and gotten a lot of great feedback. But ultimately, my vision is really to be able to cover the entire content lifecycle in one platform and really create an end-to-end solution, because I really hate, for me, how scattered the process becomes, especially when you have too many tools involved and you have to copy paste from one place to another. That's another kind of pain point, I think, in the age of AI, is that people are using way too many tools, and then that kind of becomes overwhelming, scattered, and then there's a lot of things that get lost in translation. So if you have one platform that is able to be trained on your brand, and then your business, basically who your target audience is, what their pain points are, all that
Mhm.
source of knowledge is kind of in one place, then that translates into strategy, and then strategy translates into content, then that
Yes.
content translates into supporting assets directly, and a very streamlined workflow. And then once you have all that, then you're able to schedule it and publish it, and then monitor the analytics in one platform. That to me is my dream, but while also maintaining the quality of the content, which I think is probably the challenge with a lot of what I see out there as kind of claiming being an end-to-end solution, but then I
Yeah.
think they kind of sacrifice the quality of the output
That's
for
true.
all the other features. And so that's why we're doing it in really like steps, and making sure that people master one feature, one content lifecycle step before we add another one.
That's smart. That's really smart. Yeah, I think that a lot of people, like you saw the prompt that you put in there was a very simple one. And what I've seen is like low quality input, low quality output. And people look like the everyday Joe sees a low quality input and then sees the output and they're like, wow, that's amazing. I've seen it. I've watched people say, oh, this is so good. And I'm like, dude, this is trash. I watched the prompt that went into there and I saw what comes out. This is not quality. You want to see quality. And I could show you stuff like what you created, and to see such a simple prompt create such great hooks and titles. That's the really impressive part. So that's how I know you have really good frameworks and strategies behind this, which most of these companies that are out there creating this stuff, they don't. You're on your own. If you go to ChatGPT right now, you're like, I want you to help me market my business. There's no framework, there's no strategy.
Yeah.
You go down 1,000 different rabbit holes. It's missing the context, it's missing your avatar, it's missing your niche, it's missing your identity, missing the mission, it's missing your story. And so you've created all this in here that really brings an output with just such a simple prompt that's pretty explosive in my opinion. So that's
I tested that same exact, and that's why I always try to demo it with a very basic sentence that kind of does the bare minimum, which I know when I do that in ChatGPT or even Claude,
Yeah.
I get the most generic content. I'm like, I wouldn't even, bother to
No.
publish any of that.
You're
And then
better
I
off
have to
writing it
keep
yourself.
digging to get in and get it out of it to get me like the storytelling side that I'm looking for. And I will say, I think like at first when I got a lot of my, because I use Vocable for my personal LinkedIn as well. And at first it felt a little like it was not, it's not everybody's style to be like overly like story driven. And I think this is what a lot of businesses struggle with when I demo this. They're like, oh, but like that's a little too much storytelling for me. I'm like, but trust me, like this is what people want.
It
And then it took
works.
me a while to get over that hump just because I'm like, oh, this is not my style. But then I just know that my style was clearly not working and it was a little too boring and like 3 sentences as a post and nobody cared. And then I see other people who are writing like long paragraphs about like, here's how I learned. I turned down 200K today. Here's what that taught me, or something like, those kind of
Right.
frameworks. And as cheesy as sometimes as they sound, unfortunately, this is currently what the top performing posts look like. And so in a way, if you want your content to do well, you kind of have to play the game and you can't really
Right.
pick and choose based too much on like how you're afraid of coming across, because you do want to perform well on certain platforms, and it takes a little bit of experimentation and going outside of your comfort zone in
Yeah.
order to really start seeing a little bit more results. And it becomes kind of like, okay, I see how this works, and people engage with it and you can start seeing the results, and that makes you feel a little bit more comfortable to kind of keep going down that path. But it's all about experimentation. Some people just prefer to have that more professional kind of stiff analog type of content or communication style. That's okay. But there are most people that are really trying to improve and master their AI content creation game. They're trying to tap into AI now to be able to do what they couldn't do before. And that's basically my story as well. I couldn't really come up with these ideas of content. And now I'm able to really build a whole community around this because I was able to go outside my comfort zone and experiment a little bit more.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it's the difference between having an article that starts with a hook at the beginning of I lost my entire crypto portfolio and my life savings in 1 hour versus here's the 7 ways to keep your
Yeah.
cryptocurrency secure. It's like, which article are you going to want to read? The seven
Yeah.
ways to keep your cryptocurrency secure, or how you lost everything because your account was hijacked or something, so it just goes to show, like, a simple storytelling framework. That's how I do all my content on Facebook. A lot of my content on different platforms is starting with that hook. And Adley Kinsman is one of the biggest in the space that talks about this. In fact, I saw a video of hers today where she was talking about the difference between somebody making like a 7 steps to making this recipe. And they take the egg and they crack it over the thing and they got a nice camera angle and it looks beautiful. The chances of somebody watching that video versus you going to the grocery store and somebody filming you and you grabbing the eggs right off the shelf and you grabbing a bottle of a package of Quaker Oats and a thing from the what do you call it, the aisle that has all the buckets and the bowls and all that stuff, and just pouring it right in the middle of the aisle, and people are like, it creates a curiosity gap. They're like, they want to know what the heck is happening and they can't help but not look away, and creating that collision, that outrage, that even that anger is really powerful. And that's what I see that your stuff is doing, which I really like how it's positioned that way. It's really smart.
And in the age of AI, people love the human aspect and the human storytelling. Just like you said, oh, I lost this much money and like, here's what happened versus like 7 ways to do this, because people just feel like that's more generic and like they don't really know how that relates to them. Like, oh, it's a good to know
Yep.
content. It's educational in a way, but it doesn't emotionally connect with maybe what I'm going through. Like if I see, oh, someone's like, how I built a SaaS business from zero to 10 million, I'm in. Like, show me the content, I'll absorb all of it. But if it says like 5 ways you can build a startup in the AI age, it's like, all right, sounds boring, but I'll figure it out on my own.
That's right. How to make money online versus how to stop trading time for money. Those are like a big,
Yeah.
big differences. So we had 2 really good questions in here. And if anybody else has any questions, we got about 10 minutes left. Please drop it in the chat. I would love to hear your guys' feedback. Love to hear positive criticisms, anything. We're open to all of it. We want to hear from you. But the first question that came in here is, at Vocable, do you have a tool for AEO, answering engine optimization? I've been hearing about this a lot recently. Instead of SEO, optimizing for LLMs.
That's a really good question. We obviously, when we launched, we mostly only knew of SEO at the time. Now I think AEO is definitely a new field that a lot of us in the content space are trying to figure out how to optimize for it, because I think we need a bit more visibility and understanding of how these algorithms would work. Let's say if someone's looking up something on like a ChatGPT or whatnot using their browser search, or how does that content come up? And so we're studying it now, analyzing a little bit around it, but I don't think we have figured it out just yet. So I'm
Yeah.
curious if anyone does or has kind of claimed that they optimize for LLM optimization. I'm really curious about that.
Well, you and I will have to have a one-on-one or conversation around that, because that's actually something I have been researching for a couple of years now, since I worked with this other AI company as a consultant. And one thing I can tell you is Google's NLP, natural language processing, has a lot to do with that, especially for Gemini and Google search results and things like that. NLP, and you can switch one word. So you could have an article, a piece of content that generates an article for your blog or an article for your Facebook or your LinkedIn, whatever this is, your email newsletter, and you can change, well, not newsletters because that wouldn't apply, but any of your public visible content like on X, and one word could be flipped around from the other, and that can make the difference between the first page, first position, and fourth page, last position. I'm not joking. I watched this happen. There was a company called Content at Scale, and they are no longer, but at the time they had an AI detector that they built, and they were getting 500,000 visits a month to their AI detector page, where people were copying and pasting content in there to see if it was detectable that it was AI written. And they were in the first position on the first page for that keyword, and they were getting 500,000 views a month. They went in, they changed the content, moved some things around, and next thing you know, they're on the fourth page, and they now just lost 500,000 views a month to their website. And they couldn't figure it out. It's like, was it the title? Was it the headline? Was it the what do we do? We added more content. We made this thing better. Like, I don't understand. And then it wasn't until we went in deep and actually used Google's NLP tool to find out that literally one word was flip-flopped and switched, and that's all it took to take a piece of content from being on the first page, first position, to the fourth page and like the last position. It was unreal. It's like 48th position or something like that. So using Google's NLP and building that into this, I'm sure, will be something that could come in the future. That's a really important piece. So I really like that they asked that question. Great question.
Yeah. But it's also like when you are looking, I mean, even just how do you pop up on Perplexity when people are researching things? How do you pop up even on ChatGPT now? Because most people are moving away from Google or any search engines, traditionally speaking, and are using AI tools to search. Like even now, Claude is launching their own web browser. People are using ChatGPT to browse now any answers and questions. Perplexity is big on research, but then how do you really come up on the top search there? And how do you actually get used as a source by ChatGPT based on the keywords that you're trying to optimize for? So that's another big question, and I don't know that there's a lot around it just yet.
Not quite. There's a little bit of stuff I've been researching. So like Microsoft, Bing, ChatGPT, they're all part of the same family now. And so you have a lot of people are moving over to the Bing world over from Google. And then, like you said, there's now a Chrome extension that you can download for ChatGPT, where when I search on Chrome on my computer now, it doesn't go to Google's search results. It gives me ChatGPT results, which is really wild. And then I'm using Gemini. I literally have my daughter. I'm like, I'll have back and forth conversations with Gemini on my phone. It's pretty wild, and it'll have full blown conversations with me and do research for me and all that. So I'm pretty much using all of them right now. But yeah, I do think we're really, really early for that question. But it kind of just shows the level of people that we have here right now. Of they are looking for the most cutting edge stuff, and this stuff is just really not out there. So fair answer. Thank you. Love your honesty, man, and transparency. I can link you with a team, possibly around AEO. That would be huge if you could do that for everyone. I really appreciate what you have built with Vocable. Beautiful. And then there was a second question that he asked that I thought was also great. How does it help with visual content, images, and videos? Can you show that?
Yeah, I think I shared about that. We're not doing visuals just yet. Although I will disclose very confidential upcoming plans, is we are partnering with 11 Labs to now be able to immediately turn podcasts, which are other types of content we're launching, or any kind of scripts into voiceover directly from our platform. We are also potentially partnering with Adobe, which is I was just at the Adobe Summit talking to their executives as an insider there to see if we can pull Adobe Firefly and their design product into Vocable. So you're able to just turn, the script or the copy of any Instagram post or carousel, and then immediately our AI takes, or their AI and our AI collaborate, and they take the copy of the carousel and turn that into a graphic based on your branding and any templates that you may choose. So that's kind of the next part of the workflow, right? As I mentioned, like for us, we kind of stopped around like copywriting, and then now trying to turn the copywriting into visuals is our next bigger step. And the way we're doing it is we don't want to reinvent the wheel and try to compete with all the tools that already exist that are doing it so well. So we're just establishing very good partnerships with the best in each category, and then just pulling those immediately into our platform so that our users don't have to leave the platform to be able to work through the rest of their workflow.
Yeah, I think we're going to make a great collaboration, myself and you, from the standpoint is I'm on the creative, artistic, graphic design side and imagery side, and you're heavy on the content writing side. And although I've learned the content writing side and I've gotten good at that, we need a collaboration between the two platforms, which I think would be really neat because I have built some pretty incredible AI image generation tools and have done a lot
Amazing.
around that space. So I think that would be really fun.
We always, by the way, always love to meet, anyone or collaborate with people that are just good at what they do. And we know I'm not trying to do everything.
That's right.
I just brought my expertise around frameworks and storytelling and content strategy. And then I want to bring other features and collaborate with existing, entrepreneurs or tools that are doing it already, and then find kind of a winning partnership to be able to deliver value to both customers and users. So definitely would love to connect on that front. And then someone said they're from Miami. So I'm living here as well now. So if I love to connect with people in the tech and AI space in Miami. I just spoke at the Miami AI Agent Summit. That was my first time actually doing anything tech related in Miami. It took me 2 years, but there's a growing community here that I'm really excited to explore. So if you are based here, please definitely reach out to me.
Yeah,
I'll put my email too to anyone who has any follow-up questions. We do also have a community that people can join for more resources and free kind of insights. Happy to, drop that too, but definitely any other follow-up questions, I'm always happy to answer.
Love it. Yeah, I just followed Stanley on Instagram, which is great. Nutrition for the heart, body, and mind. A former Googler, which is really neat. Like I was just saying before this whole call started, to Iman and Dale, I just spoke at Google in New York City, so I'm a huge Google fan, and we got something really exciting. So Iman put her email in there. Definitely send her an email if you want to
Yeah, and
collaborate.
as Joe mentioned too, he will be sending an email with the link for Vocable too, if you are interested in joining or trying the platform. Dale has all that information, so he'll be sending a follow-up email for everyone with the specific link that also gives you 20% off your first month, so that you get to actually try it at a discount and give us your feedback and see if this is for you.
Perfect. You beat me to it. That's exactly what I was going to mention. That's the most exciting part of all this is it's great to get a little taste, a little view under the hood of what you're building and kind of hear your background and where you're going with this, which I think is really exciting. But everybody gets the opportunity now to try this for a week for free and get 20% off, which is a huge deal. So take her up on this offer, try it out. If you love it, I'm sure she could use any of the feedback that you could possibly give her on it. What do you love? What do you want to see? And as a founder of a SaaS, that's like gold to us. We need that objectivity because we're so close to it. It's so
Yeah.
hard to see it ourselves. So any objectivity you can give us, things like what you brought up, Stanley, on the AEO, that is a really valuable thing. So thank you so much for that.
And also we love we're like collaborating and having our community also be part of how we shape up the next version of the products, because like I'm sure as a founder you agree, you want to build what people need. You don't, I think up until you launch, right, when you launch your first MVP, you're like, okay, I have to assume this is how people want to use it, this is what they want, and then you launch, and then at that point you shouldn't have that much input into how the product shapes up. It's all user feedback, customer feedback, and then really make them feel like they're part of building this into what it could be in the future.
That's right. So I just gave Brand so he can connect with me as well and get to know each other, and we'll all bring it together. So where's your community at? Because you mentioned you have a community.
Yeah, it's on Circle. Let me see if I can drop the link to get invited to it.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I'm also hosting more office hours and just trying to make, because when I do a lot of these webinars or even speak, I feel like I don't get to really follow up with anyone who wants more or wants to learn more. So I'm like, how do I, have a consolidated space where I can just have everyone that's interested, we're all interested in the same thing, right? So really kind of come together and learn from each other too. So I'm putting in the link here that sends you to the site. So you would create just a free account because it's on Circle. And then you join in and then
look at that.
Introduce yourself. We have a few spaces. We just officially launched it today. So it's pretty new. You guys get the exclusive
Congratulations.
early adopter community, my little AI tribe.
Come on. That's so good. I'm on there as well on Circle. Jesse's on there. Nancy's on there. So they said they're going to be signing up and trying it out as well. So this is really neat.
Yeah, and I would definitely, if anyone is interested to have any kind of put into weekly office hours, or if you want to talk about anything interesting around brand and whatnot, I'm always open to bring on other experts as part of our weekly live office hours to kind of add into the conversation. So we'll definitely talk about that as well.
Beautiful. This is great. Good stuff. Well, let me check the comments. See if there's anything else in here. We got a lot of good information. I just joined the Circle community. Hope to see you guys in there as well. Jesse, he's going to be signing up. Stanley, look at that. We got some people coming in. So it's great to meet you, Stanley. It's great to connect with you deeper, everybody here. And hopefully we get to do this again soon.
Yeah. Thanks, Dale, for having us and for putting this together. We really appreciate the work you guys do as well. And, hopefully this is one of the many more to come. So if there's also anything I can do to support the community of, Create Impact Now, and that anything I can do in this near future to help out or support, I'm all ears. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
You're the best. Thank you.
Same, Adrian,
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Iman.
Thank you, Dale. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Don. And we'll see you guys soon. God bless. And keep
everyone. Have a wonderful night. Bye-bye.